Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Tom. I guess you could say I'm a doubting Thomas.
Are you?
Maybe. It depends on the situation. But that is an example of some idioms we're going to talk about today. Name idioms. Idioms in English that use a person's name.
Yeah, we've got a couple here to talk about. One of them is very familiar to me because my parents would call my siblings smart Alex a lot. So we'll talk about that. I looked up some other name idioms that I can share with you that we hear quite frequently, that we use, especially as slang. But these are fun idioms. You should know the meanings of these because you'll hear them in just casual English. So let's get going, guys. We're going to read through today's lesson. Names you know, meanings you don't. In English, name idioms are part of what makes English fascinating. Let's put a few examples under the microscope. Doubting Thomas. This expression stems from the Bible. Thomas, one of Jesus' disciples, refused to believe Jesus had been resurrected from the dead. He declared he wouldn't accept it until he could see the nail marks in Jesus' hands and touch his wounds himself. Today, this idiom refers to someone who won't believe something without concrete evidence. For instance, if your friend's expertise is reliable, but you're still suspicious, you might be a doubting Thomas. Smart Alec. The origin of this phrase likely comes from Alec Hogue, a clever criminal in New York in the 1800s. He was notorious for fooling both his victims and the police. This expression isn't exactly a compliment, though. It refers to someone who likes to show off how clever they are, but in a way that often annoys others. For example, when Gina made ironic comments in the presentation, she was being a smart aleck. Dear John letter. The idiom dates back to World War II, when many U.S. soldiers serving overseas received breakup letters from spouses or girlfriends. Since John was a very common male name at the time, these letters often began with, Dear John. Today, the phrase refers to a painful message that ends a romantic relationship, often due to prolonged separation. For instance, Andy got a Dear John letter that ended his long-distance relationship with his girlfriend. Why not check if your name is part of a cool phrase? It's astonishing how much fun you can have exploring the quirks of language.
Okay, everybody, it's time for us to discuss the contents of today's lesson. We're going to have some fun with idioms that include a person's name. Okay, we're going to focus specifically on people's first names. There might be other ones that include their last names like Johnson or Smith or whatever. If we think of them, we'll bring them up as we go along here.
I know one with Jones, and when we get to that, I'll share it.
Okay. Jones. Okay, I can't think of any right offhand.
Oh, you'll know this
Jones,
one. You'll know this one.
I'll recognize it, I'm sure. But in any case, these are names you know and meanings you don't. Okay, so indeed, lots of people do have names, and a lot of people don't really know what they mean. We're not really talking about the origins of name words per se. We're just talking about idioms that include someone's name. Like I think for me, the name Tom or Thomas means twins or something like that. I don't have a twin, so I think it's just a name my parents, drew out of a hat or something because it just sounded good. But sometimes people do give people names because they mean something or whatever, or they're from the Bible or whatever. But in any case here, we're talking about names you know and meanings you don't. And in English, name idioms are part of what makes English fascinating. I think you have them in Chinese as well, too. You might have like a Chengyu, an idiom that has the name of an emperor or something, or a certain character from history or whatever that makes a part of that particular saying. So it's kind of the same thing. And name idioms are part of what makes English or any language fascinating.
Fun.
Let's put a few examples under the microscope. Okay, remember, if you work in the laboratory, if you're taking your science class or whatever, and you want to look at something really small, like, a single-celled creature or something like that, you will use a microscope. Okay, it's freestanding on the table. You look down into it, and then you adjust the focus with your hand or something like that. It's not the same as a magnifying glass. You use that to see words that are too small or something. You hold it in the air between the paper and your eye. That's a magnifying glass, but scientists will use a microscope.
They sure will. So, yeah, if you put something under a microscope, that's actually a saying that we use. You're just going to examine or study something really carefully, like Tom said. You're going to analyze it, inspect it. Or if you even want a harder word is scrutinize. Scrutinize something. So the first name we've got here, our idiom using a name is doubting Thomas. If you're a doubting Thomas, you're someone who just doesn't always believe what you're told. Maybe you're very suspicious. So this expression comes from the Bible. Our author here used the phrase stem from. To stem from means to come from or be caused by something. A stem is part of a plant, and it comes from the main part of the flower or plant, and it emerges from that, so it comes from that area. So it stems from the Bible. The Bible is a sacred book. For Christians, it contains the Old Testament and the New Testament, and it's considered to be Holy Scripture. So Thomas is in the New Testament, and he was one of Jesus's disciples, and he refused to believe that Jesus had been resurrected from the dead. Jesus was crucified. They took him and they used nails and they put his feet and hands, they nailed him to a cross, and he died that way, which is a really horrifying death. And his body disappeared from the tomb. And people said he'd been resurrected from the dead, which means you come back to life after being dead. And Thomas just didn't want to believe that. Now, what happened was the other apostles had seen Jesus after he was resurrected. They ran to tell Thomas, and he said, I won't believe until I see him myself.
Seeing is believing, as we sometimes say. So that seems reasonable. I'm not going to believe you until you actually show me evidence. So I did want to say also that the word resurrect or resurrected is most often used to talk about that particular instance of Jesus coming back from the dead. And again, Thomas here declared he wouldn't accept it. He wouldn't accept that fact until he could see the nail marks in Jesus's hands and touch his wounds himself. So again, according to Christianity, Jesus was crucified, which means he was nailed to a cross, and then those spikes would have gone through his hands. I think they also went through his feet or whatever.
2 feet, yeah.
Yeah, the feet were kind of stacked on top of each other, so you had sort of 2 feet in one, basically, for one spike or whatever.
Ugh.
And in any case, yes, he thought that, well, you got to show me those nail marks in his hands. If you show those to me, then I will believe you. And if you don't show them to me, then I'm not going to believe it until I see that proof.
Now, today, this idiom actually refers to someone who won't believe something without concrete evidence. Concrete here can be something that's real. It can be kind of a hard material that we use to make or build houses or bridges. It's cement, gravel, sand, all mixed together. And when it's wet, it's more of a liquid form, but when it hardens, it's very strong. So concrete here is being used as an adjective, and it means real and specific, not abstract or an idea. Solid evidence, something that's tangible, that you can feel. For instance, if your friend's expertise is reliable, but you're still suspicious, I don't know. Sometimes my friend exaggerates or lies a little bit. I don't know if I'm going to believe this. You could call yourself perhaps a doubting Thomas.
Indeed. And of course, if somebody says, oh, you need to believe in Jesus, he's going to save your soul, you might say, well, you got to prove it to me that he's the Son of God or whatever. And you'll say in response, oh, don't be a doubting Thomas, okay? You must believe it anyway. Don't be so suspicious. And you don't only use it in a religious context, but you use it in other contexts as well. You're going to suspect your friend's expertise, which means his knowledge about a specific subject. He's a master at it or something. So yes, indeed, you might be suspicious. and you might be a doubting Thomas. Before we go on to the next one, I did want to mention some other idioms that do have the word Tom in them. Thomas, Tom, they're the same thing. Tom is short for Thomas. That's me. That's my birth certificate has the name Thomas, but I always go by Tom.
Yeah, parents don't name their kids Tom. They name their son Thomas, and then we call them Tom as a nickname.
Right,
Short.
or Robert, Bob, William, Bill, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of thing. And the one I wanted to say was tomfoolery. Okay, that just means somebody's being naughty. Hey, we don't want no tomfoolery around here today. You behave yourself.
Or, not any Tom, Dick, or Harry can come and do this kind of work. You have to know what you're doing. You have to have a pretty good vocabulary. So any Tom, Dick, or Harry just means any random person, any ordinary person, any average person. I know another one, Tom. Peeping Tom.
Oh, no.
A peeping Tom, Peeping, is someone who secretly watches others. Usually they look into someone's window at night, or maybe they're, peeping in a bathroom. These aren't good guys. So they're voyeurs. So if you get caught by the police and you're a peeping Tom, you're going to get in trouble. They're going to arrest you.
It happens every once in a while. Somebody in the news was caught with putting a camera in the women's bathroom or something like that. It happens anywhere. So there you have it. Doubting Thomas or Tom, Dick, and Harry or Peeping Tom or whatever.
Tomfoolery.
And also the nursery rhyme my father used to tell me all the time. Tom, Tom, the piper's son, stole a pig and away he run. But that's not really an idiom. That's sort of a nursery rhyme.
It's also bad grammar.
That's true.
And away he run? Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, away he ran, I guess you should say.
Yeah.
But it doesn't rhyme that way. So in any case, let's move on now to the next one. We're talking about something called a smart aleck. Okay, that just means somebody's being smart, maybe too smart to show off their knowledge about something. You smart aleck, you. I did want to say that smart aleck has a kind of crude kind of expression that people use a lot, but we're not going to teach that here. I think in some cases they say smart aleck because they don't want to use the other one because it sounds kind of vulgar.
Yeah, it's the other word for your butt. And in my family, we didn't say that because that was considered bad language, right? Don't be a smart. Yeah, my parents said smart aleck. They didn't say aleck. They would say smart aleck. I never knew how to spell it, Tom, but I just heard it the whole time I was growing up. I didn't know that it was spelled this way. And one day I was trying to find out how to spell it, and I kept spelling it, in different ways. Well, this is a spelling that actually is an old spelling for the name Alec or Alex, I think. The origin of this phrase, where it comes from, likely comes from someone who was named Alec Hogue, a clever criminal, a bad guy. He was one of those gangsters, as you like to call them here in Taiwan. He was living in New York back in the 1800s. It says he was notorious. If you're notorious, you're famous for doing bad things. So you can be famous or you can be infamous. When you add an IN to famous, it means you're famous for bad things as well. So notorious, infamous, those are both really good synonyms. He would fool people. He would fool his victims. And he would also fool the police. So he was very clever, I would say. It's a fun expression. It's not a compliment. So when my parents would call my brother, and I have a younger sister, she's also very much a smart aleck. When they would call them that, they weren't giving them a compliment, but they were usually laughing at the same time. If you're giving someone a compliment, you're saying something good about them. You're praising them. You're showing them that you approve of something they've done or said. So maybe someone just got a really cute haircut. You give them a compliment and you say, "Oh, I really like that haircut on you."
Here it's being used as a noun, but it could also be used as a verb to compliment somebody, to say something nice about somebody. But here again, it's a noun to give someone a compliment. And again, to be more specific here, it refers to someone who likes to show off how clever they are, but in a way that often annoys others. Okay, so everybody pretty much wants to look like they know more than other people. Everybody's very willing to show off what they know. But if you're being obnoxious about it, you're trying to make other people feel sad about it, then you might say, oh, you smart aleck, you. Why don't you be a little more humble or something like that? So again, you can show off how clever you are, but you're trying to annoy others to make them feel annoyed or to make them feel really kind of bad about you or mad at you.
Or maybe feeling a little foolish. We're going to talk more about this, guys, but it's time for our break. We'll be right back.
听众朋友大家好，我是安娜。我们今天带大家要来看3个很有用的片语，而且很有趣哦。为什么呢？因为这3个片语都会跟人名有关。那这个在英文当中的片语，我们知道这些 idioms 其实有各种不同的主题啦。但是如果我们学这个名字以后我们至少要听得懂哦。例如像第一个 Doubting Thomas， 你说奇怪，我又不是 Thomas， 干嘛讲我 Doubting Thomas？ 不是，它指的是多疑的人。字面上的 Doubting Thomas 是常常会怀疑别人的这个 Thomas。好，那它当然会有一个典故啦。我们在第一个 Doubting Thomas 的第一句特别注意一下，来自于、源自于表示来由，也可以用这个动词的 stem from， 或者是我们常讲的 come from， 还可以用 originate from， O-R-I-G-I-N-A-T-E originate from， 这3个都有表示由来的动词片语。那么接着呢，我们来看一下到底是源自于哪里。其实 Doubting Thomas 是源自于圣经啦。那 Thomas 他如何呢？他不相信耶稣已经从死里复活了。所以在第3句的地方我们特别注意一下。第3句我们来看一下 until 这个连接词。until 本身可以当介系词，也可以当连接词。但是特别注意哦，在英文当中我们通常会把某一件事情在什么时间点之后才发生，当我们用到 until 的时候，强调的是时间点之前不如何如何。所以你看第3句，他宣称他不能接受这个事实 until 直到这个时间点之后，直到他自己看到耶稣手上的钉痕，触摸他的伤口才会接受。所以我们复习一下 until 的用法。所以当然这个 Doubting Thomas 指就是一个人很怀疑啦，常常怀疑东怀疑西的。最后面第5句我们看到这个字叫做 suspicious， 我们最常用的还是 doubtful， 有没有 doubt 再加上 F-U-L。 那在中文当中也有一个叶公好龙这样的成语。不过这个叶公好龙其实跟这个 Doubting Thomas 就有点不一样，因为叶公太喜欢龙了，龙飞过来的时候他反而怀疑他自己，反而还跑走了。所以中文当中也是有一些人名的片语。不过接下来我们要看第2个Smart Aleck。Smart Aleck 就是可能你的身边就有这样子一个觉得自己很聪明自作聪明甚至自以为是的人。那他也有一个起源。不过我们在 Smart Aleck 这个地方看到第1句他讲到起源就不特别用动词了，他直接把 origin 这个名词点出来。那他基本上就是一个 Alec Hawk 这个聪明的罪犯源自于这个人当时在1800也就是19世纪的时候是真的只有这一个人存在。我们看到第2句当时因为他有什么事情恶名昭彰，他喜欢愚弄一些受害者，愚弄警方，觉得自己很聪明而恶名昭彰。恶名昭彰这个形容词叫做 notorious， 第2句 notorious。 那跟他很像的形容词大家注意一下，叫做 infamous， I-N-F-A-M-O-U-S。 那这个字就要特别小心了，因为 famous 有名嘛。那 infamous 第一它的发音叫 infamous， 第2它不是不有名的意思，它是很有名但是是因为坏事出名，所以它是 notorious 的同义词。不过最后在休息之前我们提醒大家第4句有一个限定用法的关系子句先行词是 someone， 后面从 who 到句尾的地方是一个限定用法的关系子句。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're talking about idioms that have names in them. These are first names, more specifically. There are other ones with surnames, but we're focusing specifically on first names. We've got Doubting Thomas. We also mentioned every Tom, Dick, and Harry. I don't want every Tom, Dick, and Harry to come to my party. Or you can be a peeping Tom or whatever. What's the other one I said? I said myself, tomfoolery. That's another one.
Yeah.
And then we introduced the one about being a smart aleck, which means you're kind of showing off your knowledge and you're trying to annoy other people at the same time. Of course, sometimes people contribute to conversations by adding things that they know, and they're being, nice about it and everything. They're not trying to make other people feel stupid or something. But if you do try to make others feel foolish or something, then you could say, oh, you're being a real smart aleck. You should probably, pipe down.
Now, here's an example. When Gina made ironic comments in the presentation, she was called a smart aleck. She was being a smart aleck. Maybe, for example, you're in front of everybody and you're giving a presentation, and just then the power goes out. And you could say something that's a smart alecky or ironic by saying, oh, great, just what I need, the internet to go down while I'm giving my presentation. Ironic comments can be just the opposite of what you mean. So you can make a comment that seems to mock the situation. You don't have to mock a person to be ironic or to be a smart aleck. Maybe, your printer gets jammed just before a big meeting. You could say, oh, great, the printer jammed right before my deadline. Perfect timing. If you were just to listen to that and accept exactly what the person said, you'd think, what? But we like to be sarcastic and use this kind of humor, especially in the United States, I know. So you have to kind of get familiar with the kind of ironic or irony that we use a lot in our humor. And my brothers, especially, they're very sarcastic. Their humor's funny, but they don't make you feel stupid. But it's kind of fun to have in the house. My mom would laugh a lot.
Yeah, know the difference between being ironic and being sarcastic. Sarcastic means you're kind of saying things like, oh, I really like the job you did yesterday. It's really great. Or we really benefited from your efforts. Of course, the person was probably lazy, so you're being ironic, but you're also being sarcastic.
You can be sarcastic towards yourself as well, and that's not bad.
Indeed. And so here the example is saying that she made ironic comments in the presentation. Okay, so she was in front of other coworkers or whatever. They were having a meeting. She was giving a slideshow or whatever, but she made these ironic comments in the presentation, and therefore they considered her a smart aleck. Okay, now let's move on now to something called the Dear John letter. Okay, so the idiom dates back to World War II when many U.S. soldiers serving overseas received breakup letters from spouses or girlfriends. Okay, this is kind of similar to the local phrase of bing bien, I believe, with a guy goes off to serve in the military and his girlfriend can't wait for him, so she shacks up with some other guy. That would be similar to a Dear John letter, but of course the guy in the military stationed, on some offshore island somewhere, he gets a letter from his beloved girlfriend that he's had since high school, and she says, well, I'm sorry to tell you this, but, me and Dave have been seeing each other, and I think we should break up. I'm sorry about it, but that's the example of a John letter. It always begins with Dear John.
Yeah, Dear John. Today, the phrase refers to a painful message that ends a romantic relationship. Remember, this is a breakup letter. Breakup here in our article is a noun, but if you want to use it as a verb phrase, you have to separate those two words. I want to break up with you. So a spouse is a wife or a husband. And, it's hard to get those breakup letters. I'm hearing that people are being ghosted today. If you are ghosted, it means suddenly you have this friendship with a person online and they just stop texting back with no explanation at all. That's being ghosted. So that's even worse, I think, than getting a Dear John letter.
It's easier because to write a letter, of course, you have to make the effort. So I think nowadays it's pretty standard practice to just ignore somebody, to ghost them, and the other person needs to figure it out. Oh, I guess you don't want to be my girlfriend anymore.
Terrible. So remember to be polite and considerate and kind in your relationships. Sometimes this phrase refers, like I said, to a message that is ending a romantic relationship, often because you've been separated for a long time, We call that a long-distance relationship. Those are almost always doomed to failure. People need to be together more frequently for a relationship to work. Prolonged means something that is lengthened beyond the original time that you had thought. So, for instance, Andy got a Dear John letter that ended his long-distance relationship with his girlfriend. So that's just one other name idiom that we use.
Exactly. I did want to mention there's some other ones with John, like John Doe. That's just your average person. Or Johnny come lately. That's somebody who got too late to a particular scene and did not benefit from the scene or whatever.
Johnny come lately usually means that after something has been worked on and is successful, someone else arrives and wants to take all the credit for it.
Okay, that's it. Yeah, I was thinking of the line in the Eagles song.
Haven't you ever had a party and you've been working and decorating and making all the refreshments for it, and then a friend shows up right before the party starts and wants to take credit for helping get the party all arranged? Oh no, that's a Johnny come lately. We don't need them.
So that's another idiom that has the word John in it. Johnny, of course, just means little John. And again, today the phrase means it's a painful message that ends a romantic relationship because of a prolonged or continuous separation. For instance, or for example, Andy got a Dear John letter that ended his long-distance relationship with his girlfriend. I'm sure he's quite sad about that. But again, as you said before, I think most girls these days will probably just ghost the boyfriend, and he'll probably have to figure it out himself.
I wanted to mention something that I brought up at the beginning, and that was a name idiom using a last name instead of a first name, and that is keeping up with the Joneses. If you keep up with the Joneses, it means you're trying to live in a lifestyle that's similar to perhaps a neighbor. So you want to match the kind of car they have, or the house they have, or maybe the vacations they take. You want to match what they do. And sometimes you can get into debt trying to keep up with the Joneses. So the Jones is the name of the family, and then the keeping up with the Joneses, you just add an ES to Jones. So that's a pretty famous one too. I could mention one we use here in Taiwan a lot is something called a lazy Susan. A lazy Susan is put on those round tables that we sit down and eat these beautiful Chinese meals on. And it's a spinning tray that you can put your dishes on. And it's easy to get all the dishes to everyone around the table by just spinning that lazy Susan.
I remember my mother had one of those many years ago. And another one that involves the word Nellie, which could be a woman's name. Nervous Nellie, that's somebody who's too nervous. They worry about things all the time. Usually a girl, but you could also use it to talk about a guy as well. Or there's also Anxious Annie, which is kind of the same thing. And, of course, if everybody gets the same thing, you could say, hey, we're even, Steven. You paid me back for what you owe me. So, yeah, we're even, Steven. And, of course, there are other ones as well. I'm sure you've got some as well.
Yeah, Debbie Downer, someone who's always looking at the dark side of a situation and isn't very optimistic, is kind of pessimistic. Don't be a Debbie Downer. And again, just because it's a girl's name doesn't mean you can't use it on a guy. It's for both sexes, so it's kind of fun. See if you can find more of those out there and practice them. And see if you hear them when you hear your native English-speaking friends speak. We use them all the time.
Indeed. So why not check if your name is part of a cool phrase? I already said that about my name, Tom. There are several phrases with my name. It's astonishing. It's very surprising how much fun you can have exploring the quirks of language. Quirks, of course, are unusual, different kind of strange things that happen. You could describe someone as having a quirky personality. They're a little strange. They're a little unusual. But they're not quite crazy, okay?
No.
They're not quite insane. They're just interesting or unique, and that's how we describe language. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Here comes our Chinese teacher.
最后面我们就来看一下 Dear John letter， 有一封信是亲爱的 John。John 是谁啊？ John 其实就泛指所有的这个男生啊，其实他是分手信耶。这怎么说呢？这真的是有一个 origin， 有一个起源的，因为当时是发生在差不多2战的时候，因为打仗的关系，很多在海外服役的美国士兵啊，就会收到 因为没有办法长期分离，就没有办法再延续这段关系，可能来自于 spouse、配偶、girlfriend 的分手信。那为什么是 John 呢？因为在那个年代啊， John 这个字是很多美国男生的名字，所以很多的 John 都收到了 Dear John Letter， 甚至在英文当中有一首西洋老歌就叫做 Dear John Letter， 大家可以在 YouTube 上面搜寻看看。所以呢，我们来看一下这一段当中的一些文法句型重点。比如说第一句的 date back to 加上时间，它不需要被动哦，某一件事情追溯回什么时候。再来的第三句呢，也有一个限定用法的关系子句，先行词是 a painful message， 痛苦的讯息，后面的 that 到句尾的地方限定这个痛苦的句型，其实就是所谓的分手信啦。那主要的原因是因为没有办法长距离的恋爱。最后面的第四句当中，我们可以把 long distance relationship 特别画起来，所以如果是长距离的这个一段关系呢，可以直接用 long distance， 注意要加一个 hyphen 连接词哦。而 relationship 通常可以指的就是一个这个异性之间的爱情这种关系。我们今天提到了3个有关于名字的片语，希望大家都喜欢。我是安娜，我们下次见。
Okay, that brings us to the end of our lesson for today. Think of some interesting idioms that involve names and talk about them with your classmates. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.